Welcome to the Great Shrimp Shoal. Today we're going to get right into another discovery in the forest. There is a lot more there that I didn't expect. A great surprise. Then we'll stop over in my 30-gallon tank where something has blocked the filter, and honestly, you won't believe what it is. Let's get things started. Honestly, I didn't expect any more surprises at this point. I thought that I had lost all the shrimp that I could stomach without any explanation, and that it was going to take a miracle for this community to bounce back. But day after day the surprises keep coming, and they're multiplying. I did believe that I was missing some of the number of fry that were hiding in this tank, but I was off by about 5 or 10 individuals easily. I was totally unprepared for the total number that have survived in a tank that has now claimed the lives of so many shrimp previously. A normal person would probably have given up by now, but my persistence has paid off. Lo and behold, a few seconds after putting food into the tank this morning, and it was positively swarming with baby shrimp, waiting for their turn to take a piece of the food. I lost count at around 21, and I was quick to double check to make sure that that number was at least somewhat right. 21 fry. That must mean that nearly every shrimp from the matriarch that birthed them has survived, and even she is still puttering around to this day. As I said last week, I have had nothing like this, even in the mountains, where I've had tons of births. In the mountains, the number of shrimp has stayed pretty stable at around 40 individuals, even after multiple generations of birth. I've guessed for a long time that the food and filtration only play a small part in the health of a tank. If my guess is right, and it is like what some others have been saying of planted aquariums on the internet, then half or more of the capacitive ability of a tank is based on the biofilm and the bacteria living in the substrate, on the plants, and on the tank walls itself. The shrimp are growing extremely fast, too. When I filmed the episode from last week, the fry were almost half the size that they are now. What's most interesting is that there is an average size, and some are below that considerably, and a few are above it. So, it may at first look like there are shrimp from different families here, but I can confirm they all came from the same shrimp mother. Another thing to note is that while they are getting green coloration right now, they appear to have a reddish-brown hue as well that is more dominant. The mother shrimp, too, has dropped her green coloration and now looks like a common wild Neocaridina. I'm reluctant to call it, but it could be entirely possible that this shrimp has carried a recessive gene for the wild coloration, and that the resultant community is now devoid of the green color because of that propagation. This has always been a worry of mine because, as I understand it, the jade green variety of dwarf shrimp is one of the closest genetically to the wild variety. The matriarch is still healthful and comes out to feed whenever there is food to be had. I still can't get over how different she looks now than she did just a month or two ago. If I weren't keeping careful track of the individuals in this tank, I would think that this was an entirely different shrimp. But I have to remind myself that this is the tank where nearly 20 full-grown adults disappeared without a trace. Not even a piece of carapace or a moldy patch on the ground to speak of their loss. This is something that caught my eye that was incredibly intriguing. This juvenile shrimp stands its ground as a snail closes in and starts to cut off all possible exits. It's pretty clear that both of them are here for the same thing: leftover food particles. Shrimp don't usually take chances though, and predator or not, they're more than likely to jump out of the way to avoid something catching them off guard. So, when this shrimp backed itself into a pocket, I was thrown for a minute as I recorded the entire situation as it played out. The snails are voracious. They gobble up all of the leftover food when given the chance. So much so that I've taken to overfeeding this tank just to make sure that the baby shrimp have something to survive on. Now, the lengths to which these snails go to get their food is amazing. When I first added them to this tank, they went around pushing up all the roots for the plants, and it took a while for that to settle down. They still frequently push themselves down into the substrate to get every bit of food. So, overall, it's a wonder that this little shrimp stayed still as the snail bared down on its position. This poor shrimp gets completely trapped. Don't worry though, they make it out unscathed, but it's a good example of their determination in the face of great odds. I have something that shows off exactly this type of determination over in the mountains for later, and I think that you'll be surprised when you get to see it. For now, it's simply amazing to watch this baby shrimp as they gauge whether or not to make a run for it or to stick low to the ground. I don't think that I would take those odds well, as you'll see just how little these snails care for what is around them. See how they push back and forth? They could just as easily turn left and push down into the substrate right on top of this shrimp. A shrimp is far less difficult to move and crush for that matter than a piece of rocky ground. Boy, that shrimp looks like they are thankful for getting passed over without being harmed. It's almost as if they have a new lease on life now. And in a tank that has killed so many shrimp before, that is no small thing. We'll have to keep an eye on the matriarch to see if her green coloration returns. We'll be keeping a watch over the baby shrimp too to make sure that they are well fed and healthy. But for now, let's hop over to the mountains to see how things are progressing over there. I think that you guys will be surprised. Across the room in my 30-gallon tank, the mountains are doing stupendously. Plants, shrimp, biofilm, media, and even the microorganisms are all working like a charm. I've even seen the decapods come back. I keep coming back to the fact that I haven't seen, though, a proper detritus worm in this tank at all, and it's been almost a year of keeping shrimp here. There was a really long worm that looked like a cross between a rhabdicola and a detritus worm, but I haven't seen any of those since I pulled them out of the tank to look at. I do not know what to make of that. It's most interesting because I've come to understand that the detritus worms are detritivores, and they will eat the mulm, decayed plants, and other gunk that forms in the clumps just under the substrate. Those clumps fall down in between the cracks like some sort of gooey cement, and that's what creates the visible ring around the outside of the tank. Now, without detritus worms, there would be nothing besides the snails that are willing to eat that stuff and process it as food. Without that mulm getting processed, one has to imagine that it's just chilling there at the bottom of the tank, increasing ever so slightly over time. There has been no significant nitrate or ammonia spikes either, so whatever is going on there without the detritus worm seems to be a good deal for the moment. Apart from the worms, another thing has come back into focus in the mountains. Here, the time has come for more mating, and it is super fun to watch the male shrimp try their luck for hours on end. They completely change their demeanor and mood. They are constantly floating around the tank now with their antennae pointed all over the place. It's amazing to see the difference in their behavior when locating a mate is the only thing on their mind. They stalk their fellow female shrimp to the point that it honestly becomes a little bit uncomfortable to watch. The male shrimp use their antennae to look around and to see where the shrimpy pheromones are coming from. Sometimes that means keeping a wide arc in front of them or investigating the filter return for telltale clues. During this process, you get to see just how much control these shrimp have over their antenna. It's not just a door on a hinge that they can swing back and forth. You can see here that this male shrimp is arcing his antenna forward to taste the water in front of him very carefully, and you get to see them when they sweep backwards when they swim around the tank looking for prospects. All of these shrimp can streamline themselves and sweep back their antenna so that they are closely held to their body for protection. This diversity of options really highlights how dexterous they are. In case they are approaching food or a female shrimp, the males use their antenna to scope out their target. It's important because there is a give and take with this transaction. If the female isn't happy with the encounter, she can start pushing back rather hard and even take flight, bumping or knocking the male shrimp out of the way. All of this, of course, is important, but we also have to consider the fact that most shrimp are sexually dimorphic, and for shrimp, that means that the female is larger than the male, so she's physically more present and imposing. I've covered this entire process in a recent video, which is worth checking out on my channel. You'll get to see just how crazy the mating process is for these shrimp. So, last but certainly not least, we have the crazy bamboo shrimp who love to get into mischief, and are really the loners of my 30-gallon tank. I've likened them to bulldozers before, and not without good reason. They love to push their way around the tank, and for the most part, plants do not really get in the way. I have seen them push through the hairgrass, the hygrophila, the rotala, and even ride the bucking leaves of the bronze swords when they're moving around. So, when I checked in on the tank late in the week, I found the flow from the filter return was lower again. You can imagine my surprise though when I saw a tail poking out of the tip of the return flute. The smaller of the two bamboo shrimp had stuffed itself into the filter return and was probably all the way up inside the tube to its tail, and that starts to turn up and over the tank wall there. To get there, they had to push past the louvers, which, while being a tight fit, is also angled outward, so I couldn't imagine how they would have an easy time backing out of this sticky situation. To help out, I set up a camera and tried to record the process of very, very carefully removing the flute, and hopefully providing an easy exit path. Unfortunately, my towel blocked the rest of the video and I wasn't aware. But in the end, after I removed the flute and adjusted the intake speed, the bamboo shrimp was gently pushed out of the return tube. Crisis averted, no crushed shrimp and no stuck shrimp clogging the filter return now. So that is it for this week. I am still gathering materials for my third tank, and as such I haven't got an update for that setup right now. I'm looking to gather all the remaining elements this week though, so hopefully I'll be much further along when next we meet. Until then, please like this video and subscribe to my channel to help me grow my content. I hope that until then, you have sweet shrimpy dreams. Good night.